whole situation is that we have our shoulder square. That's our number one point. That's our key. Let me write these three down, then I'll be able to go over them a little bit. We want to have a shoulder square. We want to be on the outside breast. And we want to be in a football position. These are the three things that we're trying to get taught in blocking, especially on the perimeter. When we go out, and like I said, the three things most important. The shoulder square situation. What we're trying to get taught as a receiver is you drive off the ball. We're driving off the ball and we're reading the defensive back. As he continues to backpedal, when his eyes go inside and he reads run, when he plants to come forward is when we're breaking down. A lot of people say give it a 4-yard cushion when you break down an 8-yard cushion, etc. Get down and break down in order to block it. What we're trying to do is we're going to drive off the ball looking at the defender, and our breakdown point is when that defensive back plants to come forward, then we want to break down. When we talk about breakdown, we talk about football position. We're talking about our feet slightly wider than shoulder width apart, our butt down, our back up, and how the best way for me to describe it and how we do it, I guess, is what we talk about. Everybody in here squatted. And that's the best way for me to describe this. You put a squat rack on your back and you go down. This is what we want to define as a football position. You want our butt, all our weight up underneath us here. You don't want to bend over here, you know what I mean, bend at your back. You want to bend your legs, try and keep your back straight and get down here where you can move. That's what we're talking about in a football position. Our shoulder square, why is that so important? I don't care if they give off 2 or 3 yards of ground. As long as their shoulders remain square, they're still blocking the defensive back in front of them. So as I drive off the ball, I'm driving off the ball. He plans to come forward. I'm breaking down the football position, and we're trying to get on his outside breast. And when I say his outside breast, you say outside eye. I want his nose on his outside breast. So you're planted down here. What we're trying to do is widen the defender and open up the alleyway. So many times when we're running option blocking and some of those different things, let's say we're coming outside here. His job is to block the corner. We'll say we're going to option support here. He drives off the ball to this corner. When the corner plans to come up, he wants to break down and get on his outside shoulder. Don't want to be outside of him. He doesn't want to get out there and give the guy an alleyway to run inside. But if we get the ball pitched, whether it's sweep, whatever, and we're trying to get the ball out onto the highway, what we call the highway, the alleyway out here on the side. This is the sideline here. We're trying to get on the defensive back's outside breast. We get on his outside breast with our shoulder square. Now, if he tries to power rush us and we have to give up 3 or 4 yards, if we come out and break down and he's trying to power rush us and come through us, the thing I'm going to try to do is fight to keep my shoulders square. Because as long as I don't get my shoulders turned, he can't get up the field. And if he's going to power rush and go through me and I can keep my shoulders square and keep him in front of me, I'm continuing to block him. If he comes up and they want to give him a butt and use their flippers here, they give him a shot and they maybe give a yard or 2 a cushion so they feel more comfortable, that's fine. As long as the defender's in front of him, and what we're trying to get accomplished, if I get on his outside breast, this corner is taught never to let anybody outside of me. I have got the outside. So as soon as I get on his outside breast, it's kind of like we're trying to expand the hole. We're trying to widen this corner to get him out. As the corner continues to widen, 9 times out of 10, they will run to get across your face to get on the outside and not allow the back to come out. Especially when they see this ball pitched and the back coming out here, they're going to fight to get outside of us. We want to remain to keep our shoulders square. We're trying to shuffle. As he crosses our face, and we have what we call a 5-yard cushion to the sideline, what we're trying to do at that point is turn his shoulders and run him out of bounds, is what we're trying to get done there. Trying to get him to stay on his outside breast. If he doesn't widen hard, then we'll stand here and stalk him and let the back set him up one way or another and take the block that way. This is option blocking. Those are the 3 things we're trying to get taught. When you look at how it's being done, when you look at these 3 rules, anytime it breaks down, you can go back to one of these 3 rules where they cross their feet, they got out of a football position, they get outside the outside breast and it shoots inside, they get their shoulders turn. They don't keep them square, and the guy bull rushes them up the field and makes a play. Because, again, it goes back to the things that we want to try and eliminate. One of the top things is lost yardage plays. If we can keep him downfield to block him and he makes a tackle 12 yards downfield, we'll take that every time. But if we turn our shoulders and he gets up in our backfield and he's there when that quarterback pitches the ball with our back, then we got a problem. Those are the three things we're trying to get taught on the outside running game. On the inside running game, we talk about it cutoff a lot, getting on the inside, getting inside of him, keeping him to the outside, and then it's a very similar situation. Again, I can sit here and talk about blocking. Some of the drills, or one of the better drills that we've done. One of the better drills that we've done that's really been good for us to emphasize this, the point more than anything, was we take the sideline and a group of cones. And these cones may be 4 yards apart. They're not very wide. Maybe 4 yards apart, and we'll put the defensive back here. We'll put the wide receiver here, coming off the ball, stalking. The DB comes up. It's not a bull rush period for the defense. It's a time for them to come up and work on their moves. They may work on the swim to get over. They may work on the rip where they're trying to get through in a rip. They may try and throw the guy. They may try and take him and throw him and do those certain things. The whole point, though, is to try and keep our shoulders square, stay in a football position, and stalk the guy. When you go down, there are a lot of defensive backs, and I don't know across the country how much other people emphasize blocking. But I look at when we get into the bowl game against Florida, and I look at Lake Dawson and some of those guys downfield, and the DGs are almost like, running away from them in a backpedal situation with the receiver coming at them. When you get out there and you get a defensive back and he's on an island and you've got a guy stuck there, he's got to make the choice. Instead of you don't go out and try and knock his head off. It's like a tackle. How many times in a pass pro situation the tackle gives ground, tries to keep his butt to the quarterback, don't get your shoulders turned and let him. It's a very similar situation. This is one of the drills we did that was extremely beneficial for us. We did this a lot. The other one we did, we gave the ball to a ball carrier. The quarterback could turn and just pitch the ball here. We'd have the receiver and the DB. He'd come out and stalk his outside breast, and he was just trying to set him up and go one way or the other and trying to get outside, kind of out in the open work. 9 times out of 10 when we do this drill here, we wouldn't win, but it continued to make us better to fight the situation and what we're trying to get. The shoulder square, the outside breast in the football position. It's okay. What we're trying to teach route technique. We have what we call it inside the framework of the body. And I was fortunate enough, I GA'd at Florida State for a guy named John Eason, who's a receiver coach down there. Played a lot of years in the pros and everything else. He's extremely intelligent when it comes to receiver play, and I was fortunate to be able to work for him and kind of learn the ropes a little bit about what it was all about wide receiver play. He's a great teacher and very knowledgeable about it, and I take a lot of what he talks about and what he implements, and it doesn't matter the situation, it doesn't matter the technique of the defender. It's the same thing I talked about this morning. We're not beating landmarks on the field, we're beating people. And these are things that you look at that hold up no matter what. When we talk framework of the defender is probably the biggest thing. When we talk framework of the defender, we're talking never getting outside the framework, no matter whether he's an inside technique, an outside technique. We use a weave, and probably the best way we teach the weave, and one of the drills that we use to teach the weave, we get on the hash mark. When I talk about a weave, I just talk about kind of an inside shoulder, outside shoulder. It's not just a straight downfield burst, but it's what we call the weave. The best way to teach it, get on the hash mark and run every pattern you have, and the route should never come off the hash mark. They've got to get in the habit of a weave. If I'm trying to run a curl, I'm trying to weave to turn my defender to the outside so I can plant and come back to the ball, having him turn to the outside. A lot of people will run it off the stem where they're upfield into the post, and I'll talk about that when I go back to framework. But where it all starts and what we do when we first start out in practice, we start talking about our weave, and it's all run right here in the framework of the hash mark. It's maybe a yard wide. It's however wide the defensive back's shoulders are is what kind of width we're talking about. Talk about framework of the defender. If the DB is outside technique, head up technique, or in a man technique inside. And let's just take the curl, for example. We run the curl 16 yards deep. And what we're trying to get done, we take the curl, we want to weave, and if we're running an intermediate breaking route, we have the last 5 yards or the top of the route, which we call a burst. As we start our weave, we want to try and turn our DB to the outside, the last 5 yards being the burst, trying to get him to open this way and come back to the ball. That's a curl, so to speak, off an outside technique. Off a head-up technique, it may be more that, and off an inside technique, it may be more that, but it's all run inside the framework of the defender. Whether it goes out, whether it goes up, or whether it goes inside, we're not trying to beat air. A lot of people will say, okay, well, you run on when we run our curl, and we find it most beneficial, we run up the field, and then we make a post move to try and sell them to the post, and then we come back to the ball like this. And I think that's great, and if that's what you teach, that's super. I'm not against it, but the thing we're trying to do, if you leave the framework of the body to make that post move, the thing that you do is you lose the defensive back in every one of these. If I can get the defensive back going back on every one of them, on every single one of them, the defensive back has to come through me in order to make a play for the ball. You put the defensive back on your hip. Let's say we're the corner. If you run up, in, and curl, and he drops back, he does not have to give you, he does not have to come through you in order to get to the football. You give him the alleyway we're talking about where he doesn't have to come through you to make a play. So we talk about framework of the defender, and I just draw the curl up here, and I'll go over a lot of the routes that we're running and how we're trying to teach them. But this is a mainstay, kind of speak. You hear me talk about all the time framework of the defender or the burst in order to try and get the guy separated and trying to get him turned. Because the biggest threat a defensive back has is getting beat deep. And that's what we're trying to utilize in our route techniques in our route running. Our route tree and how we do it all. We label or we letter our routes. A lot of people number them, but then you're limited to 10 routes, and we've got quite a few more than that. So our route tree. We have an R90 game, our quick game, so to speak. We have a quick game where you run the hitch, and we call it an H. Pretty simple. We have the 4-step speed out, which we call a Q, a quick out. We have the slant, which we call an S. If it gets too complicated here for anybody, let me know. We get up here, we have the fade. You get a hard corner, you get a bump and run corner. We have the fade. We'll run the out, the O. We'll run the square in, which we call an M route for middle. We'll run a curl, which we call a J. We'll run a C route. We'll run an R route for run. We'll run a Y route, which I talked about earlier, which is the inside takeoff, so to speak, that we use a lot on our triple floods. We have the post route. We have what we call a V route, which is say if we're running that weak side flood for the middle receiver to be the whole receiver on the weak side, we call that a V route. We have the cross route, an X, which goes across the field at 6 yards deep. So we have here, we have like an out and up, which we call an L route, and we have a comeback, which is a K route. Now you say, geez, that's a lot of routes. I mean, that's a whole lot of routes. But that's why we go to the letter tree more so than the number tree. And that's why we have so many, for an incoming freshman, if he can learn the letter tree, he's got an opportunity to play. If an incoming freshman can learn the letter tree, it's easy to tell him, run a C, run an O, run a K, run an M. But you can't tell him, run down there 16 yards, try and burst and get him to turn the outside and then, square it in. You can't go through that, but you can tell him to run an M. So for us, the first thing that they get when they come in is a route tree. And in the notebook or whatever, it's broken down to describe each route and how we're trying to get it taught and the depths that we're running it. When you go through this, okay, all of it, again, is run framework of the defender, whether it's man, whether it's zone, etc., and the things that we try and get taught here. Okay, so I went through the curl briefly of what we're trying to get. On the M route, and again, any intermediate breaking route that we're trying to get, we want to get the defender turned to the outside. If we're running an inside breaking route, we're trying to get him turned to the inside. If we're running an outside breaking route, it's not very difficult in what we're trying to get done. When we get a hard corner, a press corner, cover 2, a man-to-man bump and run, how do you beat, I don't know how many of you see a press corner, a jam corner, somebody in your face. The technique that we're trying to get in order to beat it is somewhat different. A lot of people use a swim. I'm not a believer in the swim. I don't like the swim because I think it gets away from the main thing that you're trying to teach your receiver. When you've got a corner head up, or you've got a corner pressed hard in your face, whether it be cover 2, whether it be a bump and run principle, whatever, the most important thing we're trying to get, what we always say to him, this is our release point. Directly behind the corner. That's the point of release we're trying to get. That corner is trying to make our release point out here or in here and not allow us to get straight up the field. So what we're trying to do here, the first thing that we're trying to teach on a press corner, anytime we get this bump corner, the first thing we have to do is give a move, and we consider a move or define a move as an aggressive step outside the framework of the defender. And again, it's outside the framework, so it's got to be outside his feet. And if I want an inside release, what I'm going to do is give a move outside the framework of the defender, try and get him to slide and respect the move. As he slides, we want to do what we call, we don't use a swim, because the whole idea, if you give him your chest, then you're shot. He's got what he wants. If he gets into your chest, he's got what he wants, and he bumps you off. On a swim technique, if you give your move outside the framework and slide him and go with all this swim movement up here, the whole idea of the swim movement doesn't even come into effect until you get way down in here to get his hands down. But the whole time up here, you're doing the one thing you don't want to do and expose your chest to him. So we've got a little move. Just step up here 1 second, Coach. What we're trying to get here, we want to give our move outside the framework. So he's a defender here. I want to give my move outside the framework, outside of his feet, to try and get him either to take one step or whatever. I want to get his weight leaning. Now the thing I don't want to do here, I don't want to do this, is where his hands come. And now he's got what he wants and he shoves me off. But if I can get that, and as soon as those hands come out, we're going to slap, and we do it all real tight. It's all in tight. You'll see it. I got on film where it's like a cup move. We're trying to slap that wrist, and we're trying to grab that wrist, get it off us, and now we're trying to go vertical through what we call that center point where we started. Going back, if I want to go the other way, it's the same thing where I'm giving my move outside the framework. When the hands come out, I want them down here on the wrist, not way up here on the arm. I'm trying to get this wrist, and what we're trying to do is put an X there and break it. I mean, you take a couple shots on your wrist right there, and you'll be a little more leery in sticking them out there so fast. You watch RDBs all have wristbands and tape and everything else, because when we start doing jams, we come down trying to break his wrist here to get his arms down and release up inside. As we go through it, the other thing people will try and do is they try and get their hands up high on us. We get a hand there. They try and get them up here where you can't get up here to do it. And that's where when they start getting their hands up high, we're just using a little kick method to try and get them off. The whole time we're trying to hide our numbers, keep our shoulders down here. We're in an up stance, but we don't want to be up in here because this is the one thing we're trying to hide from them. Thank you, Coach. And that's all I'll show you as we start going through some of these, watching some of the releases. It's one of the things that we're trying to do when we get off the releases. And all it is a slap with the hand. It's done in tight here. Sometimes when you get your arm out there, if you try and push on somebody's arm way up here and try and move it, it's not very hard to hold still. But you try and hold that arm up there and somebody's pushing on your wrist, you can't hold it. No matter how hard you fight it, this is our aiming point, not up here. Probably the biggest mistake is so many times when you reach to get through and allow his arm to stay in your chest. Okay. Trying to get the one move. We want the one move. We're trying to widen him, trying to get him to widen. We get him the one move, get him to take his widen step. Like here, we're running the slant. Bump and run coverage. He's giving him a move, hands down. You can see his right hand come over the top here, hands down, trying to get this here. You go through this, there's a whole bunch of them here. Talk about framework of the body. This is a cue, a quick out. We're trying to get it on 4 steps. It's man coverage. We got the DB way inside of us. His 4 steps are to go at the defensive back. So he goes 4 steps at the defensive back, and he's running the quick out there. Okay, here we go again. Framework of the defender. Defender jumps inside. Defender jumps inside of us here. We're pushing at him. He needs to be a little bit tighter to him. It's a C route. Needs a little bit, again, framework of the defender. What we're trying to do here, he's running a square in. He's either running a square in or a post. He's running framework of the defender, trying to square him up here, trying to get him turned to the outside, and then making his break. See his right hand come over the top, like make sure the hands stay down. As he comes over the top there, he's going to the post. Look at Coach Cooper. Look at the secondary coach getting out of the way. Okay, here we go again. Framework of the defender. They're trying to disguise it, jump into the inside, want to get his hands down, try and get him on our hip. Once we release here, we want to get him on our hip. We don't want to continue straight up the field. We want to try and get him on our hip so we can, if you get a guy behind you and he's trying to follow you and you can give him a head move right or left and then go from there, it's difficult to play it. This is an X route. We got man-to-man coverage. If he starts coming across and he reads man coverage, he wants to stick it right back up at him. He's not doing it very well here. We probably could have found a better route to do it on. He needs to stick it up at him, push at him to try and get him to hesitate at all, and then break away from him. I don't know what this route is. I don't even know why it's on here. Wants to stay inside the framework, try and get him on his hip. Okay, this is like we're running a fade. Okay, he doesn't do a very nice job on the release. He doesn't threaten the defender enough. But what he's trying to do here, when we're going deep, we're throwing a fade, a takeoff, an arm. What we're trying to do is throw the ball over the right shoulder of the wide receiver. We want to get here. We want to get vertical, hold our ground, look over the inside shoulder, trying to catch the ball over the outside shoulder, fading to it here. This way, we're the only one that has a shot at it. What most people try and do so many times, the receiver's natural instinct, he wants to continue to drift and catch the ball in the pocket. And it's unrealistic. You can go out there and throw it on air for a week, and as soon as you get in the game and he's running with you like it's this situation, you're not going to catch the ball in the pocket. See how he makes this? He gets pushed off his course. It's a poor initial release. And he gets pushed off his course, but he gets back vertical and gives himself room to fade out and catch the ball over the shoulder on the sideline. Trying to put the defensive back in a situation where we're the only one that has the opportunity to catch it. Okay, here we're going framework of the body. He's trying to turn him here. Again, the defender continues to move inside. We're continuing to run at the framework of the defender. He's running here. He's trying to turn him to the inside. Looks like he's running some kind of C route. Gives him a head and shoulder. Turns and takes it deep. If you're a defender, and so many times as a defensive back, if he does not run inside the framework of the receiver, of the defensive back, if you get outside the framework of the defensive back, it's non-threatening to a defensive back. I need to pause this second. I'll probably never get it going again. If I'm a defensive back and you start running straight up the field and I can get you in this situation where you're here at the end of the stage, I'm in golden shape. Because I can run deep with you. I'm already quarter turn if you break out, and I'm going to wall off anything you break to the inside. So the primary thing we're trying to eliminate, we do not want him in this situation. And if we continue to threaten him, he's got to make a decision. He's either got to stop and try and jam us. Our DBs are always trying to do this to stay on our inside, and we continue to run at him, threatening him. Because the whole thing, if you can threaten him and get on top of his toes, you put him in an awkward situation. Let's see here. This is just a cue route again. This is, again, 4 steps, speed out. Okay, here we go here. This is like on a slant route. We come up here. We're trying to give our move outside the framework of the body. We want him to slide to the outside. See how high the defensive back's hand's coming up? How he's coming up way up to the top of our shoulders? If he doesn't feel like he can swim it, he's just trying to take that right hand and bat it up in the air like he's doing here. The hand comes up high. He's trying to bat it straight up off of him there, taking it to the inside. Okay, here's one where he's coming over the top, trying to get rid of the swim. Gives his move outside the framework of the body. He gives his move outside the framework to try and get the defensive back leaning to the outside. There's his move to the outside. The defensive back's reaction to it, he's hopping to the outside. He's respecting the aggressive move outside the framework of the body. Then the receiver's taking not the swim move, but he's taking his hand, coming up over the top, trying to get the wrist, right there on the wrist, get the hands down, then we're trying to get vertical. Go again, framework, it's a cue. Already seen it. Okay, here we go, a comeback route, a K route. Receiver's way outside, playing like a zone technique, like a cover 3D. Outside looking in. We're going to run at him again, threatening him, running at the framework of the defender. Trying to get him turned here, planting, and coming back to the ball. Selling it off an R stem, a takeoff stem. Here's a fade. What he's trying to get here, he ought to run at the framework of the defender a little bit more, get his hands down, but he's got to get vertical here and catch his ball over the outside shoulder. This is how we're trying to get it thrown. The quarterback, we're trying to get vertical here to give the quarterback room on the sideline to lay the ball up, and he's catching it over the outside shoulder. Not giving the defensive back a chance. What is this? It's like an R route. Staying vertical again. Trying to get here. Threatening him. He ought to threaten his inside a little bit more. Now he's staying vertical and he's not drifting. See where he's fading out to catch it? So we want to try and get him fading out where we're catching it over the outside shoulder and we're the only one with a chance at it. Okay, here we go. We get outside of here. It's not a very good release. He doesn't do a very good job of giving his inside threatening move. Gives his inside move. The defensive back steps inside. He gets vertical. Get him on your hip. Now he's done. The way we look at it, if we can get him in this situation, he's done in a man under. Where he's got to try any kind of head move or whatever. We're trying to give our move, the wide step there, the head and shoulder shake, breaking it off to the inside. Okay, here we're running, he's running it out. He wants to try and turn him to the inside with his weave. Again, it's all a weave. It's all in the framework of the defender with the burst, trying to get the defensive back turned like we're going deep. Framework of the defender. Here we're running a curl. He's running a curl. He weaves to the inside shoulder, then back to the outside shoulder to try and turn him to the outside to 16 yards deep, planting and coming back to the ball. That's a hitch. Okay, here we talk about our release. Threaten him to the inside. Get him leaning to the outside, or get him leaning to the inside, then get his hands down with a little swat there. Get vertical. He could be a little bit more on his wrist. See how he's up on his elbow? Needs to be a little bit higher up on his wrist. Get vertical. Once you get off it, get vertical. Give yourself room on the side to catch it. Again, here we go, releases. Now we're getting like a cover 2. The guy's not right in our face. He's off us a little bit, about 5-yard cushion. Release about 3 or 4 yards to his inside and make him make a move. Here we're releasing to the inside, make him come down inside. Here, now we get vertical and get what we want. Give a head and shoulder move, goes to the post. Go up and get it. Here it is again. Release like he's trying to get down inside. It's man coverage. Defender jumps down inside. He gets vertical. Running it out. Same thing. He's down inside. Threaten his inside. Get vertical. Catching the fade. Catching it out over the outside shoulder. Here we go again. Nice job, nice view here of his hands. You can see his hands coming out. He's coming down, threatening inside. There's the right slap, and there's the left hand right here. All in tight. All in tight, trying to get his hands down to this point. Both hands down, release vertical. We're going here. We get man under curl, we're trying to break. This is impressive right here. You don't coach this. I just have the talent. Framework of the defender. Here we go here. Running probably a curl or a square in or a post. Trying to get him turned to the outside. Get him turned to the outside. Get up on his toes. And then we're trying to get vertical. Framework of the defender. Running a square in or a curl. Trying to come in with the weave. Turn him to the outside. Plant. Running the square in off it. Trying to get him turned the opposite way where we want to go. Here we go again. Framework of the defender. Running it out. Threatening him. Nice view here. When he comes out of the out, he's got to wait on the ball, watch him lose ground. Coming back to the ball. Continue to come back to the ball, and you eliminate the chance of the defensive back getting there. In all these situations, you'll find the defensive backs on his heels. This is a good view of the burst here, where we're trying to get upfield. He should be a little more inside the framework of the body. Gives a good burst right there like he's going deep. Gets the defender turned. Gets a good push. Comes back to the ball. Needs to come back to the ball. Framework of the defender again. Running a comeback or an O route, depending upon the depth. Trying to run it off a takeoff stem. Get a good push. Again, it's all running him. Threatening him. Don't ever give him the luxury of not getting on his toes. Don't ever give him the luxury of not getting on his toes. Q route. Release here. We get a jammed up corner. Threaten him. Make him slide down inside. Get his hands down. See how it's all tight and inside? Get his hands down. You can rub shoulders with him and he can't stop you. Get his hands down. Get vertical. Now we're putting him in a guessing game. Get vertical. Get him on our heels. Give us a good move. Watch Coach Holtz's quickness here. And I say this, but I look at these techniques. Number 87 is not a speedster. This number 21 here goes down to the combine and runs the second fastest time for any DB. Lake Dawson Forest, he's a 4.640 guy. He's not a blazer, but he can continually win on technique. When I was at Florida State, we used this stuff. Lawrence Dawsey, who was the rookie receiver of the year last year, Lawrence Dawsey was a 4.840, and here he's leading all rookies in receptions in the NFL. It is a speed game, and speed kills, but you can win technique-wise. And so many of the time, Lake Dawson can beat any defensive back we have, and he's probably our slowest receiver. Because technique-wise, he's gotten to the point where he's getting it mastered, and he's getting it down, and you get him on your hip and do some things where number 21 can run. But if he's trying to guess which way you're going, and you got him on your hip, and you're throwing a head and shoulder move and a stick move and getting vertical, then it's tough for him to win, no matter how fast he is. Here's a good view here in the framework of the defender. He widens. Framework of the defender, running a square in. Framework, threaten him. He's trying to, it looks like he's going to the post. Get him turned to the inside. See, now right here, he starts out with an outside turn. He starts looking to the inside. We want to beat him to the post. We got to try and get him turned to the outside. So he comes in, and then he comes back out. Now you'll notice he doesn't run way outside of it. He doesn't run way out here where he can't get back inside. So many times that you run way outside the framework out here, and you got to take 2 or 3 steps just to get back inside the guy. If you can turn him just by running at his shoulder, you take those 2 or 3 steps away from him, or you take those 2 or 3 steps to get even with him. Turning the defender is not the hard job. The hard part is trying to turn him inside the framework of the defender. Gets him turned here. Look at his hands. See his hands? He takes a slap with the right one. The left one comes down to get the left arm down. Now he goes vertical. Framework of the defender. There's a good view of it there. Threatens him. Defensive back's hands come out. There's the slap and there's the little hook. See if I can slow this thing down. There it is right there on the wrist, what we're trying to get. Our aiming point is in tight to the body, in close to the chest. Get his hands down. Now you've got what you want. This guy here, Willie Clark, is like world-class speed, this defender here. He can run. Sells the takeoff route, try and get him believing in the R. Plant, lose ground coming back to it. Framework of the defender. Does a nice job here squaring him up. Does a nice job here. Comes inside, threatens almost like he's going to the post. Now he squares him up almost like he's going to break it where he can go either way. Throws a head and shoulder into it. Runs the out.
Toasted.
Toasted. Okay, here's another one. Trying to get it here. Trying to give the inside move. The defenders, see how they start getting their hands way up on the shoulders where you can't come over the top? Well, you're trying to, then we start using this, but we're trying to get that hand up off the shoulder. Defender puts his hands up, get it down, run the square in here. Framework of the defender. Not a very good release here, gets a little bit too wide. So we talked about the L route when we're trying to run the L, the out and up. We don't want to plant and break and lose our speed. We still want to maintain our speed. The only thing we're trying to do, we want to raise our shoulders, stutter our feet, look over our left shoulder. A lot of people want to plant, look at the quarterback, and then go. We don't want to lose our speed. All we're trying to get out of this is a hesitation step by the defender. Framework of the body. Same thing here, trying to get to his right shoulder. We're trying to turn him to the right, and then breaking it to the inside away from him. Framework of the defender, trying to turn him to the outside, and you can turn him just by running at one shoulder or the other. You don't have to over-exaggerate and get way outside. Turn him to the outside, bring your left hand over, clean it up, taking it down. Okay, here we go here. Side view, you don't get as good a view. There's the move outside the framework of the defender. Hands down. Framework of the defender. Here we go here. Running the post route. Running the post cut, trying to get him turned to the outside. Once we get him turned, breaking it back underneath. And it's all done. You can turn a defender without getting way outside the framework. As soon as you get outside the framework, you're in trouble. Giving his move here, outside the framework, running a slant route. Outside the framework. Trying to